First, Saunder, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
We are, for all intents and purposes, about a little under 3 months away from the show. How did we get to this place? How did you come to learn about the chorus and get into doing this work?
Well, I met Gabe at a very straight place at Mantamar in Puerto Vallarta. And we realized that we kind of have the same conductor. We have a conductor in Southern California who connects us both, and that's Robert Eistad of Pacific Chorale. Robert Eistad is also the director of choral activities at Cal State Fullerton, where Gabe did his master's in conducting. And so that's the Southern California connection. It was, I think, a few years after meeting him when he wrote to me and said that he wants to commission a big work, like a long work. Typical commissions are just like 5 minutes, 4 to 5 minute small pieces, but this was a long commission to commemorate the 10th annual memorial. And supposedly I'm not supposed to say anniversary, but I don't know what to call it. The 10th annual remembering of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And immediately I thought of writing a Requiem. And a Requiem traditionally is really a mass. If you look at Mozart, the most famous ones, Mozart, Verdi. If you look at Duruflé, Fauré, they're all set in Latin, but there's one particular Requiem out of the masterworks, the classics, that broke out of the norm, and that is the Brahms Requiem, or the German Requiem. So instead of prayers for the solace of the dead, kind of going to heaven, going past purgatory, finding eternal rest, right? Prayers for the dead, Brahms actually focused on the living. And so what Brahms did was to curate different texts from the Bible still, Psalms and whatnot, but instead of eternal rest grant to them, O Lord, which is how typical requiems start, Brahms started with, blessed are those who mourn. So it's focused on the living. It takes on a very humanist perspective. And for me, that was the inspiration. That's kind of where I took a cue. I kind of based this particular Requiem on the Brahms, took themes from the various movement, architecture, where there's a solo, where there's not a solo. It even uses also a soprano and baritone solo like the Brahms Requiem does.
Where were you when you first heard about Pulse?
I was in Los Angeles. Yeah, and in fact, this isn't my first piece that kind of responded to Pulse. I was so affected by that. A little backstory about me. I actually did not grow up in America. I grew up in the Philippines. I moved here when I was 23 and always had this vision of America, right? Like as people, as immigrants, we were sold this version of the American dream. And that same American dream made us want to move here and pursue life here. And I think when Pulse happened, that was my 4th year since moving to the US. I was still at school. I was doing my master's program at USC. And I was in a city where I could relatively had the freedom to express my gender identity. And when that happened, I think it kind of broke some sort of glass. It kind of broke that version of a free America a little bit for me as an immigrant. And I was just really affected by that at that time. I wrote a piece called American Breakfast. And the text basically likened gun shooting, because it was happening at it was happening so often that it's like breakfast in America. And so I had a piece called American Breakfast that responded kind of to that event.
Let's talk a little bit about the work. This will be the first time it's performed, right? It was commissioned for this show.
Yeah.
How much of a work is a work in progress? Like, once you get to know the chorus, once you start working with them, how much do you think it will change, grow, adapt?
I mean, I'm pretty happy with the form of the work right now. It's revoiced. It was voiced for SATB first for mixed chorus, and then revoiced for TTBB. And now I think I'm in the process of orchestrating the work. Certainly when there are particular lines where the voice leading doesn't necessarily work, we could make some of those minor changes. But what's special with this particular set of pieces too is I work with 4 poets to shape the libretto of this Requiem. So in terms of the form of the work, in terms of the melodies, the musical material in itself, I think I'm at a place where I'm quite content with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Steve?
Where do you live now?
I live in Los Angeles still.
Okay. And have you been to Orlando during the process?
I have not actually. I did not get a chance to visit Orlando, but we had interviews with some of the parents of survivors.
Right, that's what I was going to ask you next is, have you interviewed or talked to survivors, to the parents, to the lovers perhaps, of the people who died?
Yeah, in fact, we interviewed one of the moms. I think her name is Mayra Alvear. And one of the movements in the Brahms Requiem, the 5th movement, says, to thee whom I kind of need my notes for this. Can I get my notes so that I don't misquote myself?
Absolutely.
So the 5th movement in the Brahms Requiem has that imagery of motherhood. And it says, thee I will comfort as one whom a mother comforts. And so when Andrea Asaf, who is an Orlando-based poet, when she worked on this, we really wanted to focus on that imagery of motherhood. And Mayra kept repeating in our interview with her, she kept saying, grieve with love, not hate. And so that's actually the title of that particular movement, Grieve with Love, Not Hate. That's what the soprano soloist sings in that movement.
And what did you learn on a personal level from the interviews, from the talks you had with survivors and parents?
So I watched some documentaries also that were created maybe in the first 4 years after the incident happened, and there were some of the recurring characters, and we interviewed them, at the 9th year, close to the 10th year after it happened, and you could really see that the grief didn't go away, but it definitely transformed. So I feel like that's a universal aspect to loss and grief for us, is that it really never goes away, but it transforms. Yeah.
And in terms of the universal nature of what you've created, could this be applied towards other, audiences, to other events? Is it a universal theme?
I would hope so, and that was definitely the intention in creating this piece. There's one other, I kept saying throughout this entire process that there are so many masterworks written for gala choruses that somehow stay siloed within the gala chorus community, and therefore that story doesn't really get shared to people who need to hear it. There's one particular work that I feel like broke out of that realm, and that's Considering Matthew Shepard by Craig Hella Johnson. You know, that is a story, that is a gay story based in Wyoming, but somehow Craig created an oratorio that is now widely sung by a lot of choruses, kind of spreading that message of love over hate. And in creating this Requiem, Amor Eterno, I definitely wanted to have that intention as well, and to have that, to create it with such universality that it would extend its reaches to choruses that might not identify as LGBTQ plus. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned earlier about your gender identity, so how do you identify for us to...
I identify as a cisgendered gay man.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, in terms of the actual composing of this, it's an opera?
It's a requiem.
A requiem.
Yeah.
So the lyrics, did the poet who you mentioned, did she write the words?
So I work with 4 poets.
Okay.
They kind of shared the work through the 7 movements. Leo Herrera, who's a writer based in New Orleans. Andrea Asaf is based in Orlando. Amir Rabia is a non-binary trans writer who's based currently in Philadelphia, I believe. And Brian Sonia Wallace is based in Los Angeles and formerly the Poet Laureate of West Hollywood, and writes a lot about queerness. So the process is that I actually gave them the text to the Brahms Requiem and gave them kind of notes of what I think the universal themes are. For example, the second movement of the Brahms Requiem, For All Flesh is as Grass, it has a lot of earth themes, you know. But it's also very famously the funeral march in the Brahms Requiem. And so we wanted, you know, and so Brian wrote the text. It's called Who Has Planted Their Flesh in the Ground? And so it's very much a funeral march, as well as acknowledging like the earthly references. Of course, we have the 5th movement, which is about the motherhood. The 4th movement of the Brahms is called How Lovely is Thy Dwelling Place, O Lord of Hosts. And for this one, I had a discussion with the poet of us imagining what our dwelling place is as queer people, what our sanctuary is. And for me, that is the gay bar, that is Pulse, right? That's a sanctuary for a lot of people. So this is like the Brahms, which is in 3. If you hear the Brahms, it's kind of set in a waltz. It goes da dee da dee dee dee. And, you know, isn't the waltz the dance of that day, of Brahms's time? And so for this particular movement 4 as well, I used, you know, certain elements of dance like reggaeton and bomba rhythms to kind of really just paint that dance floor as a sanctuary.
My last question, in having 4 poets that you've worked with, how did that shape the final product versus if you had had one person? Why was it something that you felt was necessary to have 4, and the influence of having 4 different voices involved in this project?
Yeah, so I definitely wanted the libretto to represent all facets of the queer community. You know, Andrea Asaf, very important for me to have a female writer within the 4. Very important for me to have a writer of color, very important for me to have a trans writer, to get the voice of the trans community in there. And then the 4 writers just shared, we worked on a shared Google Doc, so everyone could see each other's works, And I'm very grateful and blessed that these 4 writers are also very collaborative in nature, that they really are willing to play off of each other's words. And I think that helped create a cohesion throughout. And if you think of a fabric, right? If you think of a quilt, like it's made of different strands, but somehow it looks unified. And I think that it's that unity and diversity that I'm trying to go for in this work.
Good.
Yeah.
And how old are you?
I am 37.
Great.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Just one more follow-up question.
Sure.
At the end of the performance of that number, what do you want audiences to feel? Do you want us to feel shook? Do you want us to feel hope? Devastation? What are you hoping to evoke from the listeners?
You know, I don't think like I'm the type of composer who really wants to prescribe what to be. I think people will get different things from this. I mean, it's a 7-movement requiem that offers various things throughout the arc, throughout the journey. I guess instead of prescribing what people should feel, I probably would hope that people are taken on a journey and leave the room with a sense of hope and with a renewed sense of love.
How did you feel at the end of the process?
Felt heavy, but it felt like, you know, I've always thought this about art, is that it gives us the space to process our emotions in a healthy manner. And sometimes that includes our traumas, perhaps. And yeah, I hope that as a listener and even as a singer, as a performer, that's kind of like, that we are taken on that journey. Yeah.
Saunder, thank you so much.
Thank you.